On a bitterly cold night in late December 1985, a best-selling horror writer wakes in the dark of his remote cabin in upstate New York. He thinks he is alone, the doors are locked, the forest outside is silent, buried under winter snow. Then, without warning, there is something in the room. He cannot move, he cannot scream. And staring back at him are eyes so black and bottomless that they will follow him for the rest of his life. This is the night Whitley Strieber says he was taken. Whitley Strieber was not a fringe figure hiding on the margins of culture. By 1985, he was a successful author, known for dark, imaginative novels like The Wolfen and The Hunger Books that had already been adapted into films. His life was firmly rooted in New York publishing, not in NUFO conferences or late-night radio. That winter, he and his family had retreated to a small cabin in the woods of upstate New York, a place they used as a quiet escape from the city. The cabin was isolated, long, empty roads, heavy forest, the sort of place where the night sky feels close and the silence can feel almost physical. On the night of December 26, 1985. After a day spent with family, Whitley went to bed thinking about work, deadlines, the next book. It was, by every measure, an ordinary day until it wasn't. Sometime after midnight, Strieber snaps awake. There is no gentle drifting from sleep to waking, just a jolt consciousness slamming back into place. Instantly, he knows something is wrong. The room feels crowded, although he cannot see clearly in the dark. Shapes are moving. The air itself feels charged, thick, as if the atmosphere has weight. He tries to sit up. Nothing happens. His limbs are heavy, pinned, as if held down by invisible hands. His breathing turns shallow, quick. This is not how waking up is supposed to feel. A single thought pushes through the fear. Stroke, seizure, nightmare. Then he sees them. Close to the bed, something is standing small, narrow-limbed, almost child-sized, but wrong in every proportion. The head seems too large, the limbs too thin, the movements too precise. The face, if that's the right word, is dominated by huge, dark, slanted eyes that seem to absorb the light around them. It is a vision that will end up on the cover of a book that will sell millions of copies around the world. But tonight, for Whitley Strieber, it is just pure animal terror. He wants to scream. He cannot. From here, the experience fractures into moment sensations more than a continuous film. Strieber later describes the sense of being moved, not quite walking, not quite carried, but drawn out of the bedroom and out of the cabin into the night. The boundaries between walls and outside seem to blur. He has the uncanny feeling of passing through space in a way that does not follow ordinary rules. There is cold, but it is distant, as though his body is wrapped in something between himself and the winter air. The forest that usually creaks and whispers with life is, in his memory, almost completely silent. Ahead or above or both is an enclosed space, something he will later interpret as a craft. Bright, clinical light replaces the darkness of the cabin, flattening every shadow. The colors seem muted, dominated by gray, metallic surfaces. The beings are there too, several small figures, wearing tight, uniform-like outfits in muted tones, moving with a choreographed efficiency that feels more like a team of technicians than monsters from a horror story. And then, among them, one stands out. Strieber reports being placed on a kind of table or platform, still partially immobilized but fully conscious. He is not sedated. He can feel, he can see, but his body will not respond to his will. One figure, slightly taller than the others, approaches. To Strieber, this being has a subtly different presence, almost, but not quite, feminine. The limbs are extremely thin, insect-like, articulating with an eerie precision. The head tilts as if studying him, and again there are those eyes, black, reflective, unreadable. What follows in his telling are procedures that feel uncomfortably like medical tests pushed far past the boundaries of consent. He speaks of invasive examinations, of instruments that he cannot fully describe, of pain that flickers between sharp and numbed as if someone is trying to keep his body functioning while ignoring what such procedures would mean to a human being. Crucially, he does not describe these entities as sadistic in any simple way. The overriding emotional tone is not cruelty, but an almost cold curiosity, as if he is a specimen on a lab table being carefully catalogued and probed. It is here on this table, staring up into those eyes, that Strieber feels something shatter, a boundary he did not know existed between the ordinary world and whatever this is. Then it's over. In his memory, there is no dramatic return flight, no clear journey back through the night sky. There is simply a break, and he is back in his bed, in the cabin, in the dark. Hours have passed. Everything looks normal. The walls are solid, the doors closed, the forest outside still, but he is not the same in the first Hours and days afterward, Strieber tries to rationalize what happened. A nightmare, he tells himself, a brutal, hyper-real dream, maybe a neurological episode. He is a writer after all. Imagination is his trade, yet the emotions won't fade. The fear clings. There are flashes of imagery, those eyes, those hands, that table that feel less like dream fragments and more like memories trying to force their way to the surface. In the months that follow, Strieber seeks help. He undergoes therapy, including hypnosis sessions with psychiatrist Donald Klein, a respected figure in anxiety and panic research. Under hypnosis, more detail emerges. The cabin, the beings, the transport, the examination, and hints of earlier encounters stretching back into childhood. The pattern that takes shape is not a single, isolated nightmare, but a possible lifetime of anomalous experiences, strange lights, lost time, childhood episodes that now look very different when reframed. When Strieber finally decides to write about it, he does something unusual for the time. He does not simply say, "These were aliens." In the book that will become Communion, he calls them the visitors. The word is careful, ambiguous. It leaves open possibilities: extraterrestrials, interdimensional beings, something psychological, something spiritual, or something no human category yet fits. In 1987, Communion hits shelves. Its cover shows a stylized version of the face Strieber says he saw that night: the smooth head, the slit mouth, and above all, the huge dark eyes. The image alone becomes iconic, imprinting itself onto the cultural imagination. The book rockets onto bestseller lists. Readers are pulled in too. A first-person account that feels intimate, terrified, and deeply uncertain. Strieber does not present himself as a prophet delivering answers. Instead, he invites readers into his confusion, his struggle to decide what was real and what was not. For many people who would later report their own abduction experiences, Communion is a trigger, a mirror they did not know they were looking for. Suddenly, there is language, imagery, a narrative structure for experiences they had buried or never fully understood. But Communion also draws intense criticism. Skeptics point out that hypnosis is a controversial tool for recovering memory and can be highly suggestible. They note that Strieber was already a horror writer skilled at crafting disturbing scenarios, raising the question of where the line lies between imagination and experience. Researchers also highlight that Strieber, in earlier interviews, gave a vivid but false account of having witnessed the 1966 University of Texas Tower shooting, a claim later shown to be incorrect. For critics, this undermines his reliability as a narrator. On the other side, some psychiatrists, UFO researchers, and experiencers argue that the emotional texture of his story, its trauma, confusion, and enduring psychological impact rings true to people who have had extreme, unexplained events in their own lives. For them, Strieber's account is less a courtroom proof than a case study in how human beings encounter the unknown. For Whitley Strieber, that night in 1985 is not the end, it is the beginning. Over the following decades, he writes further books and gives interviews in which he describes ongoing contact with the visitors, strange presences in his home, communications that blur the line between physical encounter and altered states of consciousness, and a complex mix of fear, awe, and even a kind of love-hate connection. He links the encounters to questions about human consciousness, life after death, and whether these beings are interested in our bodies, our minds, or something even more fundamental, our souls. Strieber submits to extensive medical and neurological testing, trying to prove to himself as much as anyone that he is not suffering from a simple psychiatric or neurological disorder. The results, as reported, do not provide a neat explanation that makes the story go away. So what happened to Whitley Strieber on that winter night in 1985? Was it a classic episode of sleep paralysis, dressed in the imagery of a culture already steeped in UFO lore? Was it a trauma response, a psychological event that his mind built into a narrative of visitors to make sense of something even darker and more personal? Or, however strange it may sound, did a group of non-human intelligences really walk into a locked cabin, remove a man from his bed, and begin a relationship with him that would reshape not only his life, but the way an entire generation imagines alien contact? In the end, the Strieber case sits on a knife edge between belief and doubt, testimony and skepticism, terror and transcendence. It is a story told by a man who insists he is describing his reality as honestly as he can, and a story that resists every attempt to pin it down.